This Equipment World video is brought to you by Chevron Delo 600 ADF Ultra Low Ash Diesel Engine Oil. It's time to kick some ash. Hi everyone, welcome back to Equipment World. You're watching The Dirt. I'm your host Brian, and today we've got a bit of a mini topic. I want to talk about keeping your operators in the same piece of equipment when possible. And I do want to put that disclaimer out there first and foremost. I know that this is not always doable. Job site conditions don't necessarily allow you to keep the same operator in the same piece of equipment day in and day out. However, the reason I bring this topic up and I feel it's worthy of talking about is because I feel like there's a lot of contractors out there that have never really thought about what value it would have to them keeping their operators in the same machine. So let's talk through some of the reasons I think this is actually pretty important to not only maintaining your fleet, but also helping your company's morale. But before we get into that, I want to take a second to tell you about the sponsor of this video, Chevron Lubricants. Protecting your diesel engine and its exhaust aftertreatment system has traditionally been seen as an either-or proposition when it comes to choosing the engine oil that's going to protect your system. And that's exactly why Chevron spent more than a decade of R&D work developing a no-compromise formulation. Now, I don't have to tell you why a clogged DPF is bad news, but here's the real kick in the pants. 90% of that ash clogging up your DPF and then upping your fuel and maintenance costs, it comes from your engine oil. You might be thinking, why don't they make an engine oil with less ash in it then? You'll be happy to learn that Chevron agrees with you. They've developed a new ultra low ash diesel engine oil that is specifically designed to combat DPF ash clogging. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology cuts sulfate ash by 60%, radically reducing the rate of DPF clogging and extending the DPF service life by 2.5 times. Before you had to choose between protecting your engine or your aftertreatment system. Now you don't. Delo 600 ADF with OmniMax technology. It's time to kick some ash. So the first, and in my opinion, the most obvious advantage to keeping your operator in the same piece of equipment is personal ownership of the piece of equipment. So when I used to run loader on the job site, if I had to switch loaders every 3 or 4 days, there was really no sense in me taking the time to spit shine the cab of the machine to really make sure that all of the maintenance was being performed on the machine properly, that everything was greased as well as it could be. Because at the end of the day, when the machine's getting rotated in and out, I'm going to lose that machine in the next 2 to 3 days. So I can invest all of this time and effort to bring the machine up to the standard that I want it, just for someone else to take advantage of that and reap the rewards of all of my hard work. Then I get my new piece of equipment in there. It's in the same bombed out condition the one I just sent down the road was when I got it, and I have to start the whole process over. It totally kills any motivation I have for really taking good quality care of that machine because it doesn't benefit me. Now, obviously, I recognize that that's to a degree a selfish attitude, but that's also human nature. If you don't have a vested interest in something, you're not going to put effort forth in maintaining that something. And in this case, we're talking about equipment. Now, flip that scenario on its head. Now I have a loader that I know is my machine every day for the next work season or potentially the life of that piece of equipment. That's going to be my machine. Now there's a very high motivator for me to get in there and really take good care of that machine. Because if it gets bombed out, if I don't grease it and the pins get all worn out, I'm the one who has to reap the consequences of that. And now there's a vested interest in me taking the time to really look that machine over, make sure everything's functioning well. The other advantage it's going to have to you as an employer is the fact that if there's any maintenance issues whatsoever, even the smallest thing, you bet as the owner of that machine, as the operator, I'm going to let you know, hey, there's something going on with my machine that I'd like fixed. So now instead of you having these maintenance issues that slowly creep up over time and you're not sure where they started, you don't know when it actually started having an issue to begin with, now you have someone who will bring it to your attention as soon as it's a problem because it's their machine. They have that ownership to where they're concerned about the maintenance on the machine being done. Another great advantage that keeping your employee in the same machine has for you as the employer is, let's say we do have a major maintenance issue. Let's say that there is clear signs of machine neglect, which we see all the time on the job site. Instead of it being a big guessing game now as to who is responsible for the damage to the machine, you know very clearly right away, this was Brian's machine. It's been Brian's machine for the last 8 months. When he got the machine and took possession of it, it was all in good working order. We didn't have any of these maintenance issues. Now, all of a sudden, you know exactly who you need to approach if the pins and bushings are worn out from under greasing. You know who to approach if you have engine oil issues because they aren't topping off their fluids like they should. You know who to approach if you all of a sudden have hydraulic issues that you've never had before because someone put the wrong fluid in the wrong tank. There's all of these things that get negated when you now have one person who is owning that machine and owning the day-to-day maintenance on that machine. We have one contact now that we have to go to address the issue. On some of these job sites I've been on where you have several hundred operators and the machine will get passed around 2 to 3 times a week, how do you even begin to unravel who's responsible for the abuse happening to your equipment? You can't really, because at the end of the day, even if you've got a good idea of who it is, it's really he said, she said. We can't really go definitively find who's responsible for the maintenance issues on the machine. Finally, another great reason it's good to keep employees in the same piece of equipment is because of employee morale. I can tell you it was really frustrating to me when I would get into a new piece of equipment that literally was bombed out. Mud caked on the side of my loader door. We had spit in the floor because someone decided to dip and not open the window. Just a complete disaster of a machine, not to mention the pins and bushings were all wonked out because no one had bothered to grease the machine. I don't want to run that piece of equipment. I don't want to clean up someone else's mess just to make the conditions good for me to operate in, let alone put in all of that work to have the machine then get passed down the road 2 days later. That's not great for my morale. However, when I was given a dedicated machine and I got to own that machine, I actually came out with cleaners. I cleaned that cab out. I spit shined the cab. I made sure all of my daily maintenance was done. And I, as an employee, was very content climbing up in the cab of my machine every day. I had a clean office because at the end of the day, as operators, that is our office space. Would you want to come into your office and have trash and spit all over the floor, mud caked all over your walls? No, that's a terrible environment to work in. Our office is the cab of those machines, and the same morale problems arise when you put operators in these bombed out cabs, and there's no point in them maintaining the cab because it's going to go right down the road again. The final point I'd like to make when it comes to leaving operators in the same equipment, again, when job conditions permit, has to do with operator specialization. So let's take a company that has traditionally passed their employees around and made them get on different pieces of equipment consistently in the company. I can get halfway decent at a dozer if you let me run it for a week or two. And then you can take me and you can put me on a loader, and within a week or two I can be halfway decent. And then if you put me in the excavator, I can be halfway decent. And then if we continue to do the musical chairs thing, I can be halfway decent at a lot of pieces of equipment. And don't get me wrong, I am all for cross-training employees. I will always argue that you should cross-train your employees not only on other pieces of equipment, but also in different job site conditions, whether it's road work or underground or any variety that you can put in your employees' work history. That's going to ultimately benefit you as the employer. So please don't take this the wrong way that I don't want you to cross-train your employees. However, when you constantly play musical chairs, I, as an operator, never have a chance to really hone my craft and become an expert at any one given piece of equipment. Instead, I become a jack of all trades. And that whole phrase goes back to the trades, which is what we're talking about. You have to have consistent seat time in a machine in a lot of different environments to really become an expert in that machine. And when you constantly play musical chairs, you're just never really given that opportunity. So all that to say, overall, I know it's not always possible. I know everyone's business model doesn't fit into this nice, tidy box that I've talked about. But when possible, I would highly encourage you to start trying to keep your employees in the same piece of equipment consistently for all the reasons we just discussed. So if you've got any questions or comments, absolutely, especially with the comments, drop them down below. Let's start a discussion on this topic, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode of The Dirt.